half Ironman, a 70.3 mile. My goal was to finish under 6 hours. Broke a PR that was 10 years old. Just really blown away with how KetoneAid really made a huge difference. I was shooting for 45-minute swim. I did it in 40 minutes.
Wow.
I've been trying to break 3 hours in the bike portion of a half Ironman for 10 years, and I did it in 2 hours and 59 minutes. If I can keep my head in it, I can make my body do it. And that was, I think, the biggest thing that I got from the Ester. When I crossed the finish line, I still had stuff in the tank. Typically never happens at an Ironman event.
Frank Yoso here, CEO of KetoneAid, and today I'm really excited to have a video with James, a pharmacist in Virginia, and he's going to talk about his recent experience in his race. A lot of the videos and interviews that we have are from a couple of years ago, where there are professional athletes that have taken massive quantities. So we have a Facebook group where people are sharing different protocols and taking much less, even 1/6 of a serving, $5 worth, sometimes even less. So here we're going to talk to James about his protocol, and again, he's been great on the group, advising other people of, hey, try it this way. And he also helped with the niacin protocol, changing the time frame and how to tell how much to take. So James, welcome to the YouTube channel.
Well, thanks, Frank. I have been doing an experiment with the KetoneAid, trying to kind of tweak the microdose. And I had one race simulation which really astounded me with the results. But I also was playing around with Vespa, which I use in some of my longer races, and to see if they would complement each other. So I did a second race simulation. And
why don't you quickly go over what Vespa is?
Vespa is a wasp protein from a wasp that is able to fly from Canada all the way to South America nonstop. So they investigated this wasp, found that what this protein would do is it enhances fat utilization at the cellular level. And been some experiments with it in humans, and for ultra athletes, endurance events well exceeding 3 hours, there seems to be a place for it.
And do regular carb athletes use that, or is that mainly low carb athletes that use that?
It's probably 50-50.
Okay.
It seems to be more efficient in the low carb athlete, but there are normal athletes that utilize it too, mainly in ultra events. So I did a race simulation with the Vespa and KetoneAid, and the race simulation was just over 3 hours, and Vespa's forte is 3 hours and beyond. So it wasn't much different than the first simulation. But on my half Ironman, a 70.3 mile, my goal was to finish under 6 hours. So when I got to race day, the protocol that I used is I mixed 10 mLs of KetoneAid in about 60 mLs of the Vespa.
Oh, wow.
And that was going to be my...
How many carbs are in the Vespa?
About 10 carbs. It's very, very low. They make two versions. They make one that is partly orange juice that has significantly more carbs, and then one that doesn't taste quite as well, but I figured it would be more geared toward mixing in with the KetoneAid.
Okay.
Now, the thing that really impressed me with this race is I had a PR on it. This was my 5th half Ironman, and I broke a PR that was 10 years old. But what really made it so significant is the conditions for this race were not conducive for setting a PR. and I'll go into it a little bit as to why I was just really blown away with how KetoneAid, that implementing into the protocol really made a huge difference.
Yeah, and can you go over real quick exactly the protocol? So you took 10 mLs before the race, or you took it with you?
Yeah, I'll do this real quick. So swim start, as we got to the swim start, I had my loading dose with me because I knew my heat it would probably be 15 minutes or so before I got in the water. So I took that dose. It was 10 mLs of KetoneAid and a packet of the Vespa. When we were just starting to swim, there was a slow drizzle started. So we got in the water. The drizzle really doesn't affect much other than visibility. And I was shooting for 45-minute swim. I did it in 40 minutes.
Wow.
5 minutes better than I was expecting. When we got out of...
Well, let me ask you, in your swim, do you check a watch? Is it based on pace? Is it based on field, based on other people moving? How does one pace that? Because some people they take the KE4 Ketone Ester and they say, oh, I didn't notice anything. I didn't feel anything. But then they look at their times and you're clocking exactly what they're clocking, 10% faster, but they didn't feel faster.
Yeah, and I probably didn't either. Open water is very traumatic to most triathletes. It's you have all these people surrounding you. You have to sight frequently to stay on course so you don't zigzag. So you really are not aware of your pace. You try to settle into a rhythm, and hopefully that rhythm would be your normal pace.
Right.
So I was 5 minutes quicker. So obviously, once I got into my rhythm and smoothed out my stroke, I was going faster than I typically would in a race.
And did you figure that out once you exited the water, or along the way you kind of have a watch?
I have a watch. I use a Garmin that tracks the entire triathlete, each leg of it. But you don't have time to look at your watch, and there's no real way to gauge if you're on course or not.
You figured out once you got out of the water that your time.
Yeah, once I got out of the water, I looked at my watch and was like, oh my gosh, 40, this is cool. But as we exited the water, the drizzle now turned into a steady rain. And we got, and I had a long run to transition area, which again is not conducive for setting a PR in a race. But we got on the bike, and probably 2 miles into the bike, the rain really picked up. So riding a bike in the rain is very mentally taxing as well as physically, because you're holding on so tight for safety reasons. And there were 3 spots in the course where we were required to go slow. One where there was some standing water, and then there were one section that was a rather steep downhill where the road was really slick. And even going slow, there was a lot of crashes there. And then there was a railroad track problem where typically Ironman would put carpets over the tracks, but they weren't allowed to because of the weather, so you had to slow down. So again, I've been trying to break 3 hours in the bike portion of a half Ironman for 10 years, and I did it in 2 hours and 59 minutes.
Oh my goodness!
But
you didn't do any more fuel? No new fuel before the bike portion?
No. Now the protocol that I developed during my practice races or simulations is I did a 10 ml load, but I was doing 5 mLs every 90 minutes. And when my 90-minute time came up, because I was going to ask you a question regarding that, it was raining so hard, I just grabbed my flask and I just got as much as I could get in one squeeze. So I know I didn't get
your flask of, is this the mixture of ester and and Vespa?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was planning to do that every 90 minutes throughout the race. And about 45 minutes after that dose, I was getting hungry. So I would say, okay, did I dose too low?
Too much.
Or did I dose too high and have a blood sugar? But I pulled out my flask. I probably had a tablespoon worth in it. So I down what was left. So I'm thinking I probably got 4 mLs on the first dose and another ml of the ester at that. And within 15 minutes, everything was resolved. No hunger, back on track.
If you're hungry, that usually is a sign of hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. Did you feel flat at all as far as just not having gas as well?
No. I was, with the rain, constantly fighting that. It was hard to really manage your pace or to get a feel for whether I was going slower or not. Obviously, I wasn't going slower because I set a PR, but I had planned to take my next dose once I got off the bike and in the transition area. But because I came in under time, I said, well, I'm not going to waste time in transition. I had another flask with me in my run gear. I said, I'll dose it at exactly 90 minutes. And when we got out of transition onto the run, the sun came out. It got to be 80 degrees, and It was like running in a sauna. And I do not do well in the heat. So when I got to the 90-minute, I purposely just took half the dose. I'm going to take half of it at 90 minutes, and then it was a 2-loop circuit. I said I'll take the rest of it at the turnaround point.
And each pouch has 10 mLs of KE4 and 60 mLs of Vespa. Each pouch.
Well, no. With my 90-minute dosage protocol, I took 10 mLs was my loading dose.
Loading, okay.
At that point on, it was 5 mLs of the ester.
Okay.
And just enough of the Vespa and water to make it palatable.
So you think the Vespa, I'm trying to get an idea of how much Vespa. So the loading was 10 mLs of KE4 and 60 mLs or 60 grams of Vespa. But then your little homemade pouches was 5 mLs of KE4 and maybe
and then
20?
Then a packet of hold just one. So let me go grab 2 Vespas. So,
all right.
So actually it's 80 mLs. So this is the one that does not have the orange juice in it.
Right.
And the calories in that is 5 grams of carbs. This one is the one that does have orange juice in it, and it has 9 grams.
But you didn't use that. You used the one with the 5 grams of carbs. And your loading was 10 mLs of KE, because people are going to ask exactly what did you do.
Right.
10 mLs of KE4 with 1 Vespa, the low-carb Vespa, starting off. And then you made these little pouches for every 90 minutes, which was 5 mLs of KE4. And then you think like a third
probably probably a whole packet of this.
An entire packet every 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Which is close to their protocol as the usage offset. So now on the run.
So people are going to ask, how do you know it wasn't just the Vespa? Like, had you tried the Vespa enough years? Multiple times?
I've used the Vespa for probably 8 years.
Okay, so it's not just, hey, I was taking the Vespa every 90 minutes and that was triggering fat burning.
Yeah. No.
So you found that combined, you set a new 10-year PR.
Well, yeah, but typically Vespa on my practice run or on the practice run where I use the Vespa usually really kicks in about the 3-hour mark. And I probably noticed that if there was any change, it was probably around the 3-hour mark. But the biggest contribution to this whole thing is I can't run in the heat. And it was 80 degrees and the humidity was over 95%. And with the KetoneAid, I had just this incredible focus and concentration. So typically in a race like that, when I would have got to the second loop, I would have just bagged my pace and just tried to get through it. But because of the concentration, and I mean, I could still feel the mental piece of it.
Right.
Like I felt the very first time I tried, the KE4 on a really long ride. And it was like it would not allow me to bag my pace, even though I was kind of hurting. But I did
half of the end of those races are mental, right? It's not just your legs; it's mental. So if it's fueling the brain, it's half of the equation.
If I can keep my head in it, I can make my body do it. And that was, I think, the biggest thing that I got from the ester, because you don't. Although Vespa is increasing your, it basically is going to enhance the utilization of the ketones at the cellular level. It kind of accelerates that process.
Well, utilization of the fats, it's a little bit different. The Vespa utilizes the fat. So I don't know if the Vespa necessarily utilizes the ketone ester though, but it might release the fat so it can be, because there is some theory that the ester might, at low doses, have a signaling effect that actually triggers endogenous production. So that would make sense if the Vespa kind of cues up the fat and says, here it is ready to, be utilized. I can kind of see that, working together. But you're the pharmacist.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm convinced now that the microdoses of the ester is stimulating endogenous ketone production, because on the run, it was so stinking hot. I didn't want to drink anything but water, but I took like quarter doses more frequently because I didn't want to cause any GI issues. And that maintained when I crossed the finish line, I still had stuff in the tank.
Yeah.
Which typically never happens at an Ironman event. So.
Were you hungry afterwards? Did you find yourself going over to the buffet?
No. I wanted to go through the buffet because it was free, but the line was so long. And I saw one of the volunteers had a huge cooler of Cokes. And I said, man, I haven't had a Coke for probably 3 years, but can I have one? And then afterwards, I regretted it because I hadn't had that much sugar in my belly for a long time. But no, I wasn't really hungry. I wasn't totally wiped out, which is typically the way you finish an event where you're out on the course 6 hours. You want to find
we had another triathlete, a professional one that I don't know what his times were, but top 10 professional, and he was at the buffet afterward, and I walked up and I said, are you eating this food because it's free or because you're hungry? And he looked around and he saw like the lobster or whatever, the crabs that they had, and he said, I'm not hungry at all. I'm just eating because it's free. And that's never happened to me before.
Yeah. And I also did, like you said, I did another 10 ml dose right after the race. And I think that was huge I wasn't hungry, and I think it really accelerated my recovery. The biggest thing.
How are you normally the next day? Usually people are wrecked for 7 days, wobbling legs and stuff.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I had to work a 13-hour shift at the pharmacy. I did have a stool, but I really wasn't that sore or tired.
But are you normally sore and tired? Because it's all relative to what you normally are.
I usually try to take the day off after a race, and you get out of bed and you can't even walk down the steps forwards because your quads are so trashed. But,
exactly. That's what I would have expected. So you were also helping the group with niacin. Did you ever play around with niacin?
No, but it's something that I'm gonna do to see if it makes a difference. Starting Monday, I'm switching. I switched to a full Ironman program because I'm doing Ironman Florida in November. So I'm going to use all summer to really tweak this dose thing and get it down But
Can you explain what you think niacin does and the timing? I was initially telling people a half an hour before, but then you said, hey, you might want to take it closer to, if not at the same time, and how much?
yeah, the what niacin does is it's like a carrier, and it actually speeds up circulation, not through just the main blood vessels, but even out in the capillaries. So it's delivering the ester to all the cells that really needs it quicker. Now, the problem with niacin's kind of like the ester. Too little is not good. Too much is not good.
Well, too little is better than zero, though, right? There's really no
Right.
negative on the, too little, so you
with,
can really start slow.
With the niacin, if you get too much, you'll actually start shutting down the switches that are allowing you to utilize stored fats. So that's one of those things that you got to find what's your dose, and also like the ketone ester. It's going to be based on the individual profile of the athlete, weight, age.
But sensitivity. I mean, my wife once took some niacin and her face was just beet red and she's sunburned, scratching, like, what is going on? And she looked at a mirror. She's like, what in the world have you done to me? And another buddy of mine, I told him to take only 50 mLs of the fast release. And I told him to cut it in half. He's like, oh, too much bother. I'm like, all right. And he texted me like, oh my God, I'm burning up. I'm like, well, there's a reason why I told you to cut it in half.
It's interesting. In pharmacy school, in one of our labs, we did a test to actually know how long it takes you to absorb a medication. So they gave everybody a 500 milligram niacin, which is a whopping dose.
Was that a slow? That has to have been a slow release.
No, it was the fast release.
Wow, that's like 10 times too much.
I know. Yeah. And you timed how long it took you to feel the burn, and it was a burn, all right. Most people average somewhere around 20, 25 minutes. So now we know if you take an aspirin, that's how long it's going to take for it to get to your headache. But we also learned that people responded very differently to the dose. So I'm guessing for the majority of the people, somewhere around 50 milligrams is going to be enough to carry it where it needs to go without shutting down your fat burning.
And if you already know that you're sensitive to things, aspirin, Benadryl, you would cut that in half.
Cut it in half,
a third.
Right. Yeah. And just see, you can feel niacin working.
Right.
So now the other thing is if you do overdose on it, baby aspirin, just chew it up as quick as you can or let it dissolve under the tongue. It's a prostaglandin reaction, that flushing, and aspirin is a pretty powerful prostaglandin inhibitor. It'll cancel it out in a few minutes.
Gotcha. So is the goal to feel nothing with the niacin, just a tiny amount where you just start feeling a little flush, or which one of those two? Because we already know that you don't want to. If you're already beet red, you're taking too much. You can still go for your run and you'll be fine, but you won't get the benefit. Do you want to feel just less than nothing, or just like the tiniest amount?
Just a tiny little bit. You want to know. You want to feel that. Yeah, it's because that's pulling it out into the capillaries.
Right.
You don't care what's in the blood vessels. You want what's out in the capillaries going to the muscles.
Well, it's funny you said that. Someone was asking me about blood ketone numbers, and I said, well, the ketones actually don't do anything in the blood. They don't make the blood redder, cleaner, faster. It's actually when they get out of the blood and start going into your system. So when you see the ketone numbers going down, it's not necessarily a bad thing. They're just going to where they need to go, and then it can have a few hours in that place. I told that to one person that was just obsessing about maintaining a 3 or 4 millimolar, and I said, you don't need that because it's going to these different places. We just can't test it, in the brain
and a lot of fat adapted athletes have a hard time getting over 0.5 because their bodies have become so efficient at burning the fat. It knows what to do with it.
Yep, exactly.
And it burns it.
And the niacin is known to actually lower your numbers. So you actually will show, I don't know, 20–30% lower blood ketone numbers, but that's okay because it's taking it where it needs to go.
It's delivering it out into the capillary so the muscle cells have access to it quicker.
And what about things like beta-alanine? Is that almost identical or similar?
Similar. That's a totally different physiological. That's an amino acid thing. It's working as a carrier, but that's a whole different ball game with the alanine.
Do you think that might work? I haven't played with that. Does that work with the ester?
It'd be worth researching it and just see if it would make a difference. Again, with alanine, too much will make you sick. So you got the GI issues coming into play with somebody that's aggressively exercising.
What about Ben Greenfield talked on Joe Rogan about how he combines BCAAs with ketone ester. Any reason that would work, or
I use vegan protein sources and branched chain amino acids because especially when you exceed 3 hours, your body needs the protein, or they need the amino acids for gluconeogenesis to keep your blood sugar levels stable. And if you don't provide them, it will cannibalize your muscle tissue to pull out the glutamine. And when that happens, glutamine, in its process of being broken down to make sugar, releases huge amounts of ammonia, and ammonia will shut down muscle cells.
So that would be good for longer 3-hour events, because one MMA fighter was saying that he was using branched chain amino acids, BCAA, because he heard Ben Greenfield was doing it. And it doesn't seem like that would be necessary for his more fast twitch 30-minute MMA fight.
Right. Yeah. I guess the rule of thumb is if you're going to exceed an hour, then you need to start looking at putting the branched chain amino acids in your fuel source or electrolyte source, because that's when you start off burning hardly any protein. At about 1 hour, it gets to maybe 2 or 3%. Somewhere around 3 hours, it gets to 5%, and then it eventually will get to almost 15% of your caloric needs.
That's normally without ketone esters, though. Does the ketone esters change that equation as far as using different fuel sources?
Yeah. So with the fat-adapted athlete using ketone esters, you're a triple fuel engine. You're using fat, you're using ketones, and you're using sugars. So probably the need for the amino acids would be reduced in the person using the ester, but that'd be interesting to do a study on that to see if you could, because there's a lot of people, and I actually know a pro triathlete that any exercise over 45 minutes, her breath smells like Windex. There's so much ammonia she's producing.
Have you had her try the ketone ester?
She's not racing anymore. She has kids that are going to college.
Gotcha.
But when she gets back into it, I'm going to tell her, hey, look, you need to try this.
Did you see the recent paper where they used ketone ester, the exact same molecule, D-beta hydroxybutyrate, D1,3-butanediol, and they did a paper on a 3-week simulated Tour de France. So it was more about recovery. And then what they did is they did a time trial at the end, and the group with ketone ester went 15% faster. So they were more able to be recovered.
I haven't seen that, but you've already shown that a small dose of the ester is going to help your sleep and help you recover. You've also
they were using in the paper, they were using super mega doses. They're still copying another paper from 5 years ago, and people want to isolate the variables, and they're still in this mega dose dual fuel. I'm talking 150 mLs KE4, 70 grams, just massive quantities, which, I think someone's got to do a new paper on this smaller amounts.
Right. Tell me about the ketone water.
So the ketone water we're working on, it's essentially half ketone ester and half ketone salt. So I've been telling people, someone asked in the message board, they said, well, what about, Frank already says don't mix ketone ester with MCT oil, and there'll be a, maybe I'll add a little big, a link up here, no matter what scientists say, don't mix this ester with MCT oil because they use the same pathways through the liver. But what about electrolytes? Well, the ester, there's one paper that shows the metabolism of exogenous ketones, including ketone ester, and it actually has a potassium leaching effect, and it's a diuretic. So adding salt is actually a good thing. Now, you don't want to add, massive amounts, which might be in one of these products that will have 2 grams, 2.5 grams of salt per serving. You don't want that massive amount, but yeah, I've been telling people, add some electrolytes to your workout. But we didn't want to initially, when we launched, we didn't want to be this ketone ester, salt-free ketone ester, and kind of explain the difference between ketone ester and ketone salts, and then have a bunch of salt in it. It just makes it really confusing. So we just stuck with, ketone ester, salt-free, and then explain the two. But then I was secretly be telling elite athletes, hey, make sure to get, whatever sugar-free electrolyte thing and, put it in there. Meanwhile, the non-racemic D form, which you can talk about briefly, we have the ability to make the ketone salt. So we could just put in regular electrolytes, or we can make a non-racemic ketone salt, and that would be less expensive than the ester. But then we can have, half ketone ester and half ketone salt. So it'll be 75% less salt per gram of active ingredient in this, and about 50% less than the D salts, and just have, the best of both worlds. And the salts, when I say salts, would be sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. And it would be in a 10 to 12 ounce bottle and taste like nothing. So nothing like the rocket fuel.
But I do know that a lot of the ultra athletes use the ketone salts, not for any ketone benefit, but it's a really good bioavailability on the electrolytes.
Yep.
So
yeah, I've been telling people that the people use it for weight loss. They take ketone salts and they're trying to enter into a ketogenic diet, and you need massive amounts of salt. And you could take 25 salt pills, but you tell someone to take 25 salt pills and they think you're crazy, like you're going to overdose them. But one scoop of one of these ketone salts is the same thing. So I've been telling people, hey, the benefit is the salt. It's not so much the ketones. But you're talking a little bit different about the bioavailability of it, which is a little bit of a twist. But yeah, I think the benefit that they're getting is mostly the salt. Go buy a bunch of, electrolyte drinks for your keto flu and you'll be fine.
Yeah, well, I use for my favorite sugar-free is the UCAN Hydrate because it doesn't bother my stomach. It tastes decent, and all the electrolytes are readily available. But my first time trying the ketone salts is, I had bad GI issues with it.
Did you try a racemic one, or were you sticking with a non-racemic?
I think it was I'm pretty sure it was non-racemic.
Okay.
But I've been really impressed with the KetoneAid, because not only did I set a PR, but I set a PR in each individual leg of it. So
on a bad day.
Fastest swim, fastest bike, fastest half marathon in a race, on conditions that were not conducive for any of that to happen.
Wow. So you think you'll be a fan of the ketone water?
Well, I think the where it's going to really come into play with the endurance athlete, the long course triathletes, and the ultra guys, is low doses taken maybe a little more frequently.
Right.
Doing a dose instead of every 90 minutes. I was doing half a dose about every 35 to 45 minutes
Well,
on the run.
half of your dose is still 1/6 of a serving, so let's not
Right.
confuse people. So
Yeah.
the ketone water would have 5 grams of active, so it'd be the same as 10 mLs of KE4. So that could just be your water source, your electrolyte source, and you could actually
Yeah.
take that every every 90 minutes. You just would slowly drink it throughout that 90 minutes and then finish the bottle and start again. So you just would have
Right.
it constantly and slowly in your
Yeah.
system.
So that would be fun to give it a try, especially on a long ride on a hot day, and
I'll
see if
definitely
I
send
can.
you some.
All right. Well, I am convinced that this is the fuel of the future. And I got several friends that I work with and I coach with their nutrition needs are already interested in giving it a shot. So they're using me as the guinea pig, but I'm
Well,
impressed
I
that the
think
fact that I could set a PR under terrible conditions just kind of blew me away. Now I'm ready to try it on a day where I could have crushed that bike course if had it been dry. So
do
I'm
you
ready.
do you use it before sleep as well? The 5 mLs. Some people go up to 15, but I get scared at higher amounts.
Uh, I've been using it on, like I did it the night before the race. I did it the night before all my race simulations, and it really did help me get a good night's sleep. Um,
Do you have an
I
aura
re-
ring to track that? Do you have something to track that?
now,
Okay.
um,
But you just
but
felt different. You woke up 20 minutes early.
I have trouble sleeping the night before a race. So I actually got a couple hours of decent sleep. So, you know, whether I usually will take 3 milligrams of melatonin, and that never did much. So I definitely did better with 5 mLs of the ketone. No, I did 10 mLs the night before, and that really made a difference.
Great. Well, thanks for being on here, and thanks for people can find you on the Facebook group. You're pretty active on there. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well,
Giving your
I'm actually
specialty.
gonna put on there probably tomorrow a synopsis of my race. So
If you have any charts and stuff, like here's my 8 years of racing, and then here's the ketone ester. That'd be neat as
yeah,
well.
I
If you
may
have
look.
any
I
data.
may see if I can gotta figure out where I have them. But I think this summer, on some of my long rides, giving that ketone water a test would be the way to go.
What electrolytes? Last question. What electrolytes do you do during your triathlon? Do you already have a routine to get some in there?
Yeah, what I use is I have a carb source that if you've heard of Infinite, they let you custom make your your own formula. And being the pharmacist, I got to make everything my
Wow,
own
that's great.
way. So when I first approached them and asked them about can we design something for a keto athlete, they went, huh? And then now they actually know what you're talking about. But I said, look, I want to keep it 9 to 10 grams an hour. And we designed a formula, but because of the osmolality of their products, they were really big into absorption. It wasn't enough electrolytes. So I use my custom mix. They call it James's Vegan Keto Blend. And then I use about 3/4 of a scoop of UCAN Hydrate.
But is this part of your protocol race? Because you didn't
Yeah,
talk about this. You
yeah.
talked about
So
having the KE4 and the Vespa. You had a separate water bottle that had carbs and electrolytes in it.
right, yeah. So
That's an important detail.
yeah, so this is my standard, and I've really worked hard to keep the carbs low. But I was running into places where it wasn't enough carbs to sustain me, and now with the ester thrown in there, I found that I wasn't needing as much of that carb mix,
Right.
especially on the run. It was so hot, I was just taking water, and I had planned to do, 10 grams, 9 grams an hour. I only used one of my bottles, on the
Wow.
run. So I made the whole run on just the ketone ester and water. And so I was doing 4.5 grams an hour of a car.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on here, and we'll see you on the Facebook group.
Okay, always a pleasure to talk to you, Frank.
Thank you.
Thanks.